Why don't we? It's been described as a defining moment for relations between South Africa and the United States. It's just a few hours away, in fact. The leaders of those two key nations, President Cyril Ramaphosa and President Donald Trump, will be meeting for the first time at the White House. At stake are trade relations, economic ties, all-round bilateral relations that are in tatters at the moment. Ramaphosa, who arrived in the United States on Monday, has been at pains then to explain South Africa's position, particularly on land reform, as well then as its foreign policy. These are at the heart of the Trump administration's dispute with Pretoria. Let's begin our rolling coverage then with our very own senior politics reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, live at the seat of America's government then. It's going to be an absolutely pivotal day today, Ziyanda, and a lot will hinge on the type of conversations that I had as well today.
Absolutely. And speaking of conversations, just earlier on yesterday, there was lots of talk about the Starlink deal and that South Africa has already put something on the table for Elon Musk's satellite company before President Cyril Ramaphosa steps into the Oval Office today. And there's been lots of back and forth with Musk's side of things. His team is saying that they want something in writing from the South African government. Now, we understand that DA Minister Solly Malatsi is preparing to gazette an equity equivalent program to allow then for Starlink to be and other ICT companies to be able to operate in South Africa. It's a program that in a way, if you're not going to be able to give 30% of ownership of your company to previously disadvantaged groups, then it's structured in a way that you either have a program that empowers the community, upskilling them, or in whichever way. And so we understand that Musk's team are saying put something in writing before you actually step into the Oval Office. Otherwise, Ramaphosa could face a bust-up. On the other side, the South African delegation is saying that that article that was being run in Bloomberg, which intimated this particular deal, was actually planted by Elon Musk himself, and that he's trying to center himself in the current discussions and negotiations that are taking place behind closed doors, and that Starlink is but one of many things that are currently being negotiated by the likes of Park Stawu, the Minister in the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. At the same time, Arabile, yesterday, Musk addressing the Qatar Economic Forum, where he doubled down and insisted that he cannot, as a South African-born tech billionaire, operate in our country because of some odd 140 race-based laws. And in that same breath as well, you also point you to a congressional hearing that where Senator Tim Kaine from the Democratic Party, you'll remember that he was actually on Hillary Clinton's ticket to become vice president, questioning this issue of the so-called 49 white Afrikaners. Who are they and why did they get special attention? I want you to take a listen to this.
Today's person.
Do you think Afrikaner farmers are the most persecuted group in the world?
I think those 49 people that came certainly felt they were persecuted, and they've passed every sort of check mark that had to be checked off in terms of meeting the requirements for that. They live in a country where farms are taken and land is taken on a racial basis.
Okay. Do you think they're more persecuted than Uyghurs or Rohingyas, or more persecuted than political dissidents in Cuba or Venezuela or Nicaragua, or more persecuted than those who would be threatened should they be returned to Afghanistan by violence by the Taliban?
Well, the problem we face there is the volume problem, okay? If you look at all the persecuted people of the world, it's millions of people. They can't all come here. And we had refugee programs.
So why prioritize Afrikaner farmers?
Well, because it's a small subset, it's a new issue, and the president identified it as a problem and wanted to use it as an example.
So that's Secretary of State Marco Rubio just yesterday, Arabile, being questioned about this issue just hours before South Africa is set to explain and clarify and negotiate and reset relations with the United States. Now, still in that particular hearing where Senator Tim Kaine was probing Marco Rubio, who'll be in the room, by the way, in the Oval Office, and we also anticipate to see Elon Musk there as well, where there was also a discussion about, well, how can you say that there's a white genocide when you have a party such as the Democratic Alliance, which is a party that came from the older guard of the NNP and has now morphed into the Democratic Alliance, being a part of this new administration. The 7th administration is a government of national unity. Tim Kaine questioning, Senator Tim Kaine questioning Marco Rubio to say, well, then how is that even possible? Because even a more far right-wing party, I think he was referring to Freedom Front Plus, also forms part of this government of national unity. And it's important because we've also been talking about the participation of someone like DA leader John Steenhuisen, who's also agriculture minister, which means he's also overseeing farmers and their livelihoods and their sustainability as an industry. And this is also something we've touched on in terms of it being key, him being critical in explaining those issues. Listen to this.
Let me challenge you, and I'm just going to say for the public, if you want to understand about the, quote, persecution of Afrikaner farmers, go look at the composition of the South African government. Since July of 2024, there's a government of national unity, and the opposition party to the ANC, the Afrikaner Party, the Democracy Alliance, is part of the governing coalition. They joined the governing coalition a year ago, and the leader of that party was given the remit of agriculture minister, John Steenhuisen. He is the leader of the former Afrikaner Party, still widely representing Afrikaners. He is the Minister of Agriculture in South Africa right now. I assert that this claim that there's persecution of Afrikaner farmers is completely specious. Are you aware ever during the apartheid era in South Africa did the United States establish a special program to allow South African blacks who were treated as second-class citizens in the apartheid program, a special program that they could claim refugee status in the United States?
No, because I was probably in 9th grade or 8th grade at the time.
Yeah, well, then I don't expect you to know. I'll just tell you, never has there been a program, a special program for Africans to come in as refugees to the United States.
So it's clear that it's not just us in South Africa who are upset with the likes of AfriForum and Solidarity, who have been critical in starting this campaign against South Africa and her people with this conspiracy, a right-wing conspiracy about a white genocide that simply doesn't exist, and land confiscation. When talking about our Expropriation Act, it seems that Americans themselves in their house also debating this particular issue. I think the critical thing here is to refer to Marco Rubio's stance on this matter, because it informs us of the tone and the posture and the continued extension of this campaign against South Africa that our president is going to be dispelling. And we got to speak to President Cyril Ramaphosa briefly at the South African embassy here in Washington, where he seems to be clear about the scope of this gathering, talking about trade deals, talking about trying to find a way to reset a very mutually beneficial relationship.
The most important, that's what has brought us here. We want to come out of the United States with a really good trade deal, investment promotion. We invest in the United States and they invest in us, and we want to strengthen those relations, and we want to consolidate good relations between our two countries. So I'm very positive. I'm looking forward to the discussions we're going to.
It's just after midnight here in Washington, D.C., as we anticipate and build up towards President Cyril Ramaphosa's gathering here at the Oval Office in the White House, meeting with President Donald Trump, for the first time since his return to the Oval Office on the 20th of January. We've been subjected to megaphone diplomacy, issues being discussed on social media, and transactional diplomacy is what Donald Trump espouses. So what bartering will be taking place, given how it's not just the president and his ministers, the likes of Johan Rupert, are also somewhere here in the United States. Ngcobo Jonas, the special envoy that's been appointed to also assist the South African government with business, is in the country. 11:30 local time is when that political theater is going to get underway. 5:30 South African Standard Time is when we can have our moment and sit on the edge of our seats as the world watches these two giants come together in one room.
Ziyanda, Ngcobo, if ever we wanted a proper rundown of things, you certainly have given that to us. Thank you so much for that report.